ลำไส้ของเราทำงานตลอดเวลาและทำสิ่งต่างๆให้แก่ร่างกายมากกว่าที่คุณเคยทราบลำไส้มีบทบาทสำคัญในการดูดซึมสารอาหารในระหว่างการย่อยอาหารและเป็นตัวส่งสัญญาณไปยังระบบภูมิคุ้มกันเมื่อร่างกายพบความผิดปกติอย่างไรก็ตามวิถีชีวิตที่ไม่ปกติความเครียดและอาหารแปรรูปทำให้คนยุคปัจจุบันขาดสมดุลในระบบทางเดินอาหารปัจจัยเหล่านี้ส่งผลเสียต่อจุลินทรีย์ที่มีประโยชน์ในลำไส้ของเรานี่จึงเป็นเหตุผลที่นิวทรีไลท์ใช้ส่วนผสมที่ดีจากธรรมชาติและโปรไบโอติกที่ได้รับการรับรองทางวิทยาศาสตร์ซึ่งมีประสิทธิภาพในการส่งเสริมสุขภาพระบบทางเดินอาหารและภูมิคุ้มกันที่ผ่านการรับรองทางคลินิก1 ซองให้โปรไบโอติก 6.3 พันล้าน CFU ซึ่งจะยึดเกาะกับผนังลำไส้และสร้างคอมมูนิตี้ของจุลินทรีย์ที่ดีนักวิทยาศาสตร์ของเราใส่ใจคัดเลือกเพื่อให้ได้ส่วนผสมของโปรไบโอติก 5 สายพันธุ์ที่มีความสามารถในการอยู่รอดสูงโดยไม่ต้องมีชั้นเคลือบสังเคราะห์พวกมันจึงไปถึงลำไส้อย่างปลอดภัยและสร้างสภาวะแวดล้อมในลำไส้ที่จุลินทรีย์มีประโยชน์หลายชนิดสามารถเจริญเติบโตได้ดีนอกจากนั้นยังมีอินูลินจากรากชิคโครีซึ่งเป็นอาหารให้กับจุลินทรีย์ที่ดีในลำไส้เพื่อสุขภาพทางเดินอาหารของคนยุคใหม่ใส่ใจดูแลตัวเองด้วยโปรไบโอติกสนับสนุนข้อมูลโดย Nutrilite จาก Amway
ช่วง Be the Right Probiotic โปรไบโอติกที่ใช่สำหรับคุณการเลือกใช้ผลิตภัณฑ์โปรไบโอติกไม่ใช่อะไรก็ได้แต่ต้องเป็นโปรไบโอติกที่ใช่สำหรับคุณนั่นคือ The Right Strain สายพันธุ์ที่ใช่ The Right Benefit ประโยชน์ที่ใช่ The Right Level ปริมาณที่ใช่ The Right Science บทพิสูจน์ที่ใช่พบความจริงที่ใช่จากผู้พัฒนาและวิจัยผลิตภัณฑ์กับดร.คริสติน มอริสนักวิทยาศาสตร์อาวุโสด้านการวิจัยและพัฒนาผลิตภัณฑ์ Nutrilite
Have you given much thought to the bacteria deep down in your gut? Chances are you haven't, but you may want to start. Take it from Nutrilite Senior Research Scientist Kristen Morris.
Probiotic translates literally to for life. And probiotics are live microorganisms, usually bacteria, that we add to our diet through supplementation, or they're also found naturally in some foods.
Think of it as trillions of tiny friends living inside you, sort of like your own microscopic internal social network. And just like the real thing, not all friends are good for you. That's where probiotics come in.
But they're the good bacteria. They're part of our microbiome that supports the other good bacteria that are naturally there, sort of the gatekeepers of our health and immune function in our guts.
So in that microbiome, your own internal social environment, you want the good bacteria to outnumber the bad. This helps keep you healthy, strengthens your immune system, even helps digest your food. That's why Kristen and her entire team have been working hard to create a new ally in your internal fight of good versus bad, Nutrilite Balance Within Probiotic, a new product with 5 meticulously researched and selected strains of live good bacteria.
Once they're out of the chamber, at this point, we will start counting.
But long before that product can be shipped, there's a lot of work that goes into making sure you're getting exactly the right amount of the right bacteria in each stick pack. In Amway's microlab, scientists carefully track and count the growth and number of probiotic bacteria to make sure it's just right.
And one of the ways we're going to do that is we're going to look at the colonies. So a colony is one of these circles that you see on the plate. And each one of those should represent one cell.
Because it contains tiny living organisms, creating a global product was a challenge, especially when it comes to packaging. Can you imagine how the climate in, say, Korea in winter might differ from the heat and humidity in parts of Mexico? We stop by the packaging lab to find out more.
We close it down, and then we turn on the vacuum pump, and then watch the packages to see if any bubbles are coming out of them.
Engineers here conduct test after test to make sure the stick packs won't allow air or water inside because the product is so sensitive. During production, the team runs tests like this one every 15 minutes or so.
We have one package for the whole globe for this product. We were able to come up with one solution that would work for everybody and all the different temperatures and climates and elevations and all those factors that we take into account.
And of course, once the product is safely packaged, it can be shipped to Amway business owners and consumers all around the world. In Ada, Chris Copes, WHQ News.
We found 5 probiotic strains that performed very well against our criteria. You can see that the names are somewhat long, so I'm going to say them one time. But there's a very important thing that I want to point out here when it comes to strain. Bifidobacterium animalis, subspecies lactis, HN019. HN019 tells you what strain it is. And you can refer to this simply as HN019. If you look on the far end, you see Bifidobacterium animalis, subspecies lactis, just like here, BL04. Different strains from the same family. We also have Lactobacillus acidophilus, NCFM. NCFM is the strain, and you can simply refer to it as NCFM. But you notice we have Lactobacillus acidophilus LA14. Different strain, same family. So if you're looking at a product label and it simply says Lactobacillus acidophilus, there's more than 200 of them. So what do you really know? And finally, we have Lactobacillus paracasei LPC37. So we chose these strains for all of the reasons I stated before, and we also chose these because Lactobacillus and Bifidobacterium are the 2 predominant families, if you will, of good bacteria that naturally are found in your gut. And in choosing both of those families, we are able to work to the entire gut from the small intestine all the way through the colon. And we continue to populate the 2 biggest families of good bacteria in our gut. Another reason we chose Bifidobacterium and Lactobacillus is that our gut changes as we age. And in particular, as we get older, levels of Bifidobacterium in our guts naturally begin to decline. And if you look at the totality of the research, not about this product specifically, but about Bifidobacterium, what you will find is it often drives a large portion of the immune support. When you're older, you become more susceptible to immune problems, infections, and but we wanted to make sure that we could help foster normal, healthy levels of Bifidobacterium. And so with that in mind, we chose 2 strains of Bifidobacterium. We refer to 2 of the strains as our hero strains, the HN019 and the NCFM. Those are our heroes. We call them heroes because it's these 2 strains that are found at clinically demonstrated levels in the formula. And I'll talk about the 3 additional strains in a second. So these are our heroes. And now I've just taken just a snapshot. I can't possibly go over all the data with you, but I'm just giving you a snapshot of the ways that we substantiated these claims. Recall earlier we were talking about needing to survive transit through the harsh conditions of the stomach. And if you'll look at the top panel, that's what we're showing here, is that HN019 survives very well under, these are, Petri dish experiments, if you will. But under conditions that mimic the gut, HNO19 survives very well, and it survives for up to 3 hours. So food doesn't generally stay in your stomach for 3 hours, okay? But we've shown here that the survivability is quite good with HNO19. And in fact, the bottom panel, we have the green lines at the top represent HNO19, and at the bottom is our control strain. What we're showing here is also under conditions similar to the stomach. Not only does HNO19 survive, but it remains viable. It keeps its normal growth trajectory. That's important because that's what we want it to do. We want it to continue to proliferate and continue to favor higher levels, not just of bifidobacterium, but of other good bacteria. So it survives and it remains viable. And this, with the earlier comments in mind about our gut changing and bifidobacterium decreasing, we've also shown that bifidobacterium helps to, HNO19 helps to maintain higher levels of, again, the 2 most predominant families of good bacteria in our gut. So we've shown it survives, it remains viable, and doing exactly what one of our primary benefits is, and that is to foster a healthy gut microbiome by favoring good bacteria populations already in our gut. So the final one, I know that looks really complicated, but I'm going to give you an easy explanation for this. This is showing how HNO19 competes with potentially bad bacteria. And if you remember when we played musical chairs, you know, you're walking around and you know, the music, you're so worried that the music's going to stop and you're not going to have a chair. And so the music stops and boom, you're trying to plop down in your chair. Think of your gut as being sort of like a game of musical chairs. And right before you sat down in your chair, you had to bump somebody else out, right? Well, the more seats the good bacteria have, the more seats they occupy when the music stops, the fewer seats there are available for potentially bad bacteria. So that's what we want. We want to give the good bacteria the seats. We want them to sit down in the chairs and bump out one of the bad bacteria so they don't have a seat. Okay? So musical chairs. Now looking at NCFM, I'm showing this representation is an explanation for it sticking to the gut. The top panel represents are photographs of intestinal cells, and they're stained red so that we can see them. The middle panel contains the same sort of photographs of probiotics, different probiotics, and we've stained those green. And we chose not just the acidophilus there is NCFM, but the other 3 are very popular probiotic species. The final row shows what happens when you mix those probiotics in with the intestinal cells. And what you see is the NCFM sticking, and because it grows to a greater extent to begin with, there's more of it sticking to cells, sticking to your gut cells, than for the other 3 bacteria, for probiotic species. And NCFM also, similar to our HNO19, protects the levels of good bacteria in our gut. And that occurs even when an antibiotic is being used. That's really important because antibiotics are antimicrobials. They don't know the difference between good and bad bacteria. So a lot of people think there's no need to take a probiotic while you're taking antibiotics. However, even though some of the probiotics will be susceptible to the antibiotics and die, you are going to be able to continue to seed some portions of your gut as you're taking the antibiotics, which means that you can restore that healthy balance a little sooner than if you're not taking a probiotic. The 3 additional strains, remember we have our hero strains, our supporting strains. We chose these strains because they work to help reinforce the benefits that are being driven by HNO1 and NCFM, but they do so by different mechanisms. Okay. LA14 is the first one, and I call it the fencer. Because when LA14 is in the presence of certain bad bacteria, it actually grows a little almost sword-like thing. It's called a pilus, and it's almost glass-like. And what it can do is sort of fence with certain bad bacteria. So think about fencing, you know, you go, woof, woof, right? And so just like fencing when it's in the Olympics, I mean, you get pricked one time, apparently the game's not over, right? They keep going and they keep going. And LA14 pricks a little hole in these bad bacteria. Well, they're not going to die right away. The fencer doesn't lose the other fencer doesn't lose the game right away, but the bad bacteria will die a lot sooner than if they had not chosen to go fencing with LA14. Okay. LPC37, I call him the gassy one, and don't worry, I'm not going to imitate him. But we call him the gassy one in this instance because we can see these bar graphs represent different fatty acids that this probiotic produces when it eats its food, so when it's eating the prebiotic fibers. Now, those short-chain fatty acids are important for a number of reasons. Number one, the short-chain fatty acids are the fuel that our intestinal cells use to stay healthy. But they're also important because they create and help foster an environment in our gut that is best for good bacteria to thrive and is almost contrary to the conditions needed by most bad bacteria. So yes, as part of his metabolism, he produces short-chain fatty acids, but it's important that he does that. And the process by which prebiotics consume their food, eat their food, is called fermentation. And so when you start taking this probiotic, some of you may experience a little gas right when you first start taking it. Just push through, okay? Just push, no pun intended. Okay, no pun intended. That was really good. But just push through. Because it's short-lived and you'll be fine. But all of these things, finally, I'm sorry, the last BLO4, he is the protector. He helps to protect levels of good bacteria to as close to baseline as he can before something like antibiotics take place. Now, in terms of these probiotics, you know, we've talked about mechanisms so far, but let's think about digestive health in terms of our gut. You know, I say that the best gut is a gut that goes unnoticed. You know, it's a gut that's not rumbling while you're in a meeting, you're all embarrassed and you're doing like that. It's also not a gut that's running too fast, so you have to get up and go leave that meeting and you're kind of worried that you're not going to make it to the bathroom. It's a gut that doesn't run too slow. You know, it's not making you feel heavy all of the time. Whether it's a gut running too fast or a gut running too slow, those represent that imbalance in your microbiome. And so bringing your gut microbiome to a healthier balance may help alleviate that. That's what we mean by digestive health. It keeps things running smoothly. You know, it gives you normal frequency of bowel movements and softer stool. So not too hard, not too soft. It's just normal. And so that's a big property when we talk about digestive health.